Waves, we have technologies. On the right side of the spectrum, or this light has cut it into 7 pieces, and on the side where the red is, that is where electromagnetic radiation gets weaker and weaker, so to speak. These are bigger waves. When the waves get bigger, it's weaker radiation. On the other side of the spectrum, where the blue is, blue color, the waves get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they go to gamma rays, which is very, very intense radiation. That's a radiation that comes from supernova. If it ever hit Earth, we will be fried. The Earth will be gone. That's how strong that radiation is. So on that side of the spectrum with the blue is, next thing is microwave. Microwave has only its little slot. So it's the machines are designed to deliver just microwave radiation of that frequency to the endometrial lining where the blood vessels are. So what it does is it scars those blood vessels. Remember, it's the same blood vessels that regrow every month to bleed, and then they kind of slough away. And the same blood vessels start to regrow, reform every month. This is how you have periods. That zaps those, it cooks them. It's just like cooking in the microwave for 90 seconds. And you are done. Now, those 90 seconds can be a little bit painful. It can be just like a contraction that you have when you are 9 centimeter dilated, so to speak. It's very intense contraction. The contraction lasts only 90 seconds, then you're done. That's how fast it is. Now, for that reason, because it can be a painful contraction, I have to give some local anesthesia, numb you in that area, and some patients don't feel much. Anesthesia works very well. The other technology that I talked about is cryoablation. Cryoablation, cryo means cold. Ablation means the same thing, destroy, do destruction with the low temperature. What kind of low temperature? We are talking about almost negative 100 degrees Celsius temperature. Anybody has an idea how cold that temperature is?
220 Fahrenheit minus is what we figured it.
If you are interested, a little lesson in physics, elementary school or junior high school physics. Anybody knows how to take Celsius and convert that into Fahrenheit? This is a physics second, 6th, 5th grade when it starts. That's where you learn it. Very simple. You take that number, Celsius, 100, you multiply by 9 divided by 5, and then you add 32 to that. So if I were to do in my head, it won't be 220, it will probably come out to 160 degrees. United States is one of the very few countries that use a scale Fahrenheit. We Americans are somewhat weird in some ways. We use our own scales. For example, we use miles and feet and inches. The rest of the world has converted to scientific scales. Same thing is the temperature. The scientific scale of temperature is Kelvin. Our textbooks still, doing numericals on Fahrenheit and Celsius. Celsius is used elsewhere in the world. The reason we don't use Kelvin scale is because that scale is very weird. It's good for science, but it will sound very strange if I told you, today weather is very good and the temperature is 300 degrees Kelvin. You will be like, 300? That doesn't sound right, so we don't use that scale. Actually, on a Kelvin scale, we use what is called the absolute zero, which is a temperature of negative 273 degrees temperature in terms of Celsius, which is absolute zero. You can't go colder than that. It's not possible to go colder. You cannot make anything colder than that. That's the law of physics. That's the law of nature. On the other hand, let me ask you, just make it somewhat entertaining. Get away from the procedures. How high can you go in temperature? On the other hand, cold, you cannot go further than 273 degrees. How high you can go in temperature? Is there a limit? Isn't that an interesting question? Don't you love that question? Everybody should love that question. Is there an upper limit for temperature? The answer is no. Because, 13.7 billion years ago when the universe came into existence, the temperature was trillions of degrees, trillions of trillions and trillions of degrees. You can create trillions of degrees temperature in laboratory. So let's get away from physics, get back to what we're talking about. So what's the temperature of icebergs? If you go to North Pole or to Antarctica, iceberg, you take the temperature. What kind of temperatures are there? In summer and in winter, for example. If you were to go to North Pole, right on the pole, with iceberg is 5 miles deep, temperature in summer may be 30-40 degrees negative, minus, and in winter could be negative 70-80. So just to give you an idea how cold this temperature is, negative 100 degrees Celsius, almost 150, 160 degrees negative Fahrenheit. So this temperature is so low, with the probe that goes in to destroy the endometrial lining, it's not a painful procedure. Why do you not feel pain? Because the temperature is so low, the moment it touches the endometrial lining, the tissue dies so quickly that the brain does not have a chance to detect that pain. It's like cutting someone's arm off very quickly. First few seconds, you don't feel any pain. Did you guys know that? You cut off extremity, anything, first, pain will come later. So in cryoablation, pain comes back in the form of minor, contractions for half an hour or so. Then it goes away, because what happens is this probe turns the uterus almost into a snowball. Think of it like it becomes an iceberg, and then it starts to melt. When it becomes like a solid ball, and it starts to melt. And as it melts, you have watery discharge. That's when you start to feel contraction, where it can last for half an hour. Majority of the patients don't need any pain medication to do this procedure. The only drawback is you have to lay there for 10-15 minutes. It takes about 15 minutes to do that procedure, as opposed to NovaSure, which takes only 90 seconds. In some cases, only 60 seconds, because their uterus is small. So cryoablation, on the other hand, it it destroys those same blood vessels by freezing them. And then, you see water coming out for next 2-3 weeks, and it does exactly the same thing as NovaSure. I personally prefer a little bit cryoablation, and the reason I do that, with cryoablation, let's say your periods were 8 days every month, and cryoablation shrink your period to 4 days every month. But I told you you have a small uterus, it will probably go to 2 days every month, and you got 4 days, and you are kind of, you're happy, but you wish it was even smaller, or you wish your periods completely go away because you hate your periods, because they are painful. In that case, cryoablation can be repeated. NovaSure cannot be repeated. Once you do it, it scars the cervical opening, and you cannot go back in there. It closes it. That's why I prefer cryoablation, because you do it second time, third time, you can do as many times as you want. So it gives you that opportunity. If you do NovaSure first, if that doesn't work, if you are among those 20% patients that didn't work for you, the next step is hysterectomy. Now let me go over very briefly. Let's say you fall in that you are one of those 20% patients that these office procedures did not work for you. Now the only other option is for you, maybe you were not a good candidate for these procedures in the first place. The doctor should have sort of tried to figure that out before doing it. But sometimes ultrasound will not show some small submucosal fibroid. No test is perfect. Physical exam is not perfect. So let's say it turned out that your bleeding did not stop. With NovaSure or cryoablation, it's not making any difference. Then the only option is hysterectomy. Now let's say you have to go for hysterectomy. Again, if you go to your OBGYN and he tells you, I'll do hysterectomy on you, ask him, how do you do it? You don't want to get cut. There is really 1 out of maybe 50 cases that is necessary to cut anybody. It's doable in many other ways. You will be amazed the options that I tell you nowadays that are available. Nobody need to get cut here. It used to be abdominal hysterectomy. People still continue to do that because they don't have training in other kind of. And the next step was we started doing hysterectomy through the vagina. So we don't cut you, everything is taken out through the vagina. Even larger uterus can be taken out through the vagina because you can do what is called morcellation. Start cutting into pieces and take it out. Eventually it comes out. Nowadays, we started to do laparoscopic hysterectomy. It can be removed, all of it can be done through a little hole, through the belly button and a tiny second hole. And then when all is done, the last step, you fish it out through the vagina. It's like last 2 minutes. But now there is something else, which is beautiful. It is robotic surgery. Computers do that. What's the advantage? If you have abdominal hysterectomy, you will be in a lot of pain you will be in the hospital 2 days, lot of pain for 6 to 8 weeks, time off work, lots of pain medication, tons of antibiotics, lot of risk of complications during the procedure. If you do vaginal hysterectomy, maybe recovery could reduce to 4 weeks. You stay in the hospital only 1 day. You recover fast. Complication rates are slightly less in the hands of those who are well-trained surgeons. Do it through the vagina. Laparoscopic, complication rates go even slightly lower. Recovery gets a little bit faster. But now we have robotic surgery. All outpatient. You have hysterectomy. I don't care how big the uterus is. Hysterectomy done. You go home same day. No staying in the hospital. It has to be less than 24 hours. You go back to work in 10 days. 3-4 days later, you are walking around and you pretty much don't need much pain medication. Complication rates are extremely low. How is this surgery done? I know it's scary. Someone will think a robot is going to do hysterectomy on me, a machine. How does a machine know how to do this complicated process? When this idea was suggested by DARPA, DARPA is an agency of the Defense Department which was formed in sometimes in the 1960s when Russians sent Sputnik up in the orbit. United States, we went into a little bit of a panic that they're going to win the war. They are going into space. So this agency was created at that time to come up with new ideas, new technologies to go to the moon. That's when Kennedy said, we'll go to the moon. We commit by 1969, we're going to go to the moon. So DARPA was the old NASA, you can call it. Then it became NASA. It still exists. Later on, the NASA's job was, the DARPA's job, main job was given to NASA. An agency was created. But DARPA is still there. Now it does all these they are mad scientists. They do all kind of innovative things that even NASA doesn't. No other agency compares with them. They have developed bionic hands that do everything. They are developing invisible technology. They are the ones who have invented these cars who run by themselves, drive you anywhere. I mean, this is technology of the future, but already we have cars who drive themselves. There's no driver. So a lot of technology